Okay, folks, so we're going to go over a video here of Sam Burns. He won last week at the match play, and I have a little bit of inside knowledge on a few things about him. Number one, like he's a very consistent golfer, and statistically across the board has been pretty successful, and he also has a very appealing golf swing. And couple things I think that would help players, and his coach is Brad Pullin out of Squire Creek in Louisiana, and he really has like one thing that he tries to work on, and so him and Brad really work hard on reducing arm lift at the top of his swing, and he does this by facilitating enough rotation. And you can see this like on his backswing as he goes back from address to lead arm parallel on the backswing, that his lead arm or his left arm has moved inside more than it was at address. So if you look at address here, you'll see that his hands are here, and then as he moves back, his hands have moved in, his left arm has moved in. But he's done it through the ribcage rotation and tilts. So you can see how his shoulders are on this tilt here. Now, what's interesting is you want to make sure if you're a player who struggles with getting, let's say, depth in the backswing, you could facilitate that with your arms, okay? But you don't want to do that through the expense of losing rotation. And so I see a lot of players just pull their arms in, and that's not necessarily a good thing if you're not mobile. And we want to make sure. And in Sam's case, you can see that he's turned his rib cage, and kind of an indicator that he hasn't just pulled his arms in is that his trail arm and elbow are still mainly in front of his rib cage at this point. So as his left arm looks across his chest, his arm is in front of that rib cage. Also, interestingly enough, one good point to look at is that the red line or the shaft is pointing somewhat at or inside the ball at this point. And that's a good indicator that the mass of the club is somewhat more above the hand path. So one of the things that's interesting here is if you were to not do this properly, it might encourage arm lift. So he has this set drill that he does, or waggle, that they've kind of figured out and created a lot of success by allowing him to continue that rotation and keep his arms kind of on that shoulder line that you see here. One thing that's interesting too, he's a very dynamic player. So I think what people also need to kind of take note of here is that his right hip still is in flexion, and he's lost a little bit of flex in the trail leg. Now, he hasn't completely straightened it. And this is one of these important topics, because if you're a mobile player, and you have mobility in your hip, and you have enough range of motion in your hip, you'll see a lot of players like Rory McIlroy, and in Sam's case, not extend that leg more, because if you do, you lose that, a loading in the trail glute. And but if you're a player who struggles with making your backswing long enough, and you maybe lack speed and you lack mobility in that area, it wouldn't be a bad idea to let that leg extend more. But we got to really kind of understand that you're looking at golf swings in different buckets. Okay, so principally, you would never keep that leg in flexion completely. You would allow it to extend some, in which it has here, because you can see that the right leg has actually extended a little bit and the left leg has bent slightly. And I think that's important for a lot of folks, because every week whenever I give lessons at home, mainly for most players, I get their trail leg to extend some, but not at the expense of the trail hip going into extension. That's a real important piece, because if you do that, you're no longer kind of loading your back chain in your body. So, these are kind of the big keys swing-wise. One thing that's very interesting also, I think would really help, he's a Callaway player, and another inside information on his setup is his driver is actually a 10.5 degree driver. So he likes to play with more loft, and his 3-wood is 16 degrees. And he also likes to play more forgiving irons. And because he likes to play with a little bit more spin. And that is all the way down to the ball that he's playing. And one other note is he actually plays with a wedge that is essentially more forgiving too, which is the TCB A wedge. So, he's not a guy who is going to be playing like forged blades or anything of that nature. He's looking for the most advantage that he can as a player. And being a good ball striker, he also runs a lot of combines on TrackMan to make sure that his gear is proper. And one note that one guy from Callaway said is that, he's one of these guys that kind of, rolls out of bed and swings his stuff and keeps stuff as simple as possible and kind of gravitates to one governing overall thought. So, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that any of us could kind of learn from, that, we're not trying to go out there and do 6 different things in our golf swing. So on that note, that's kind of his keys, a little bit inside information there. He's one of my favorite golf swings on tour. A fader, and you can see that, he kind of lines this thing up beautifully, creates a lot of space down here at P6. A really good move to watch. I think for amateur players, a lot of good stuff on the backswing that would help you here. So, I think this will help all of you, and also not only on the golf swing side of things, but also look a little bit into the club side, because all these guys are trying to shoot lower scores.